Hello everybody, welcome back to Mr. Rankington. At this point in time, it's been nearly 2 years since I've had a new video, but here we are. Well, to start things back up for Mr. Rankington, why don't we take a look at the Sly Cooper games. The only one that will not be mentioned today is Bentley's Hackpack, pretty much because I've never played it at this point in time. And I'll only be looking at the original releases, no re-releases, although I may briefly mention those. So let's get this thing started. Starting things off at the bottom, which is my least favorite, not worst. I know some people are not going to be happy with me about this, but starting things off, we have Sly 3 Honor Among Thieves for PS2. I know some people won't like this because of a certain game that's also in this franchise, but this is my honest opinion. Now don't get me wrong, I like this game. I have very fond memories of it, and I have an emotional attachment to it for a certain reason I won't be getting into in this video. But the reason it's at the bottom is because of some of the decisions they decided to make for the game compared to the others. It pretty much comes down to a lot of the missions I'm not a big fan of. Like, there's missions I am a fan of and I really like the gameplay, but there's a lot of missions in this game that I'm just not a big fan of. This game came out around the time whenever all these 3D platformers were starting to have all these required missions that had all these gimmicks that felt nothing like the regular gameplay. Now, there are some fun ones, and then there are some that are just okay, and then there are some that just make me dread playing through this game sometimes. But despite all that and it being at the bottom of my list here, I still think it's a good game overall. Next up on the list is Sly Cooper Thieves in Time. Again, I know this is going to make some people mad that this is still above Sly 3. Now let's just get this out of the way. Yes, there are problems in this game that are worse than in Sly 3, such as the load times, and honestly, some of the voice acting. They talk a little too much, and it's not as good as it was in the previous games, in some ways. And there's just things wrong with the story, and I wasn't a big fan of the art direction they took for the character designs, and there's just a lot of problems here. But despite all that, I still think it goes a little above Sly 3, for certain reasons. One thing is that there's not as many gimmicky type missions in this game. There are some, but there's not a whole lot like there was in Sly 3. It feels like a lot of the missions actually focus on the moves and abilities of the characters rather than having a whole bunch of gimmicks. There's also a lot more platforming in this game than there was in Sly 3 and even Sly 2. The movement and controls are a bit different from the previous games. I guess you could say it feels a little more, I don't know if floaty's the right word, or it just doesn't feel as right as the previous games, but you get used to them. And I do kind of like the gimmick of being able to use Sly's different ancestors. Not all of them control the best or have the best moves, but I do like that gimmick. I mean, they're all basically Sly, just with slightly different moves. Well, almost all of them are like that, and I like Sly's gameplay the best. So, overall, despite all the problems, I still really like this game. Now, I should say that I do prefer the PS3 version. If you really want to take it on the go, I would suggest the PS Vita version. It's doable, but if you just want to play the game in general, I would recommend the PS3 version. Now, this next one, it took me a minute to decide, because these two are really neck and neck for me for various reasons. But for this next one, I'm going to go with Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus for PS2. There's just so much to like about this game. There's a little bit to dislike, but there's a lot more to like about this game. It definitely feels like one of those early PS2 games, but that's not a problem. It feels like a really solid 3D platformer with some gimmicks here and there, but not too gimmicky. This one is definitely the most different out of all the Sly games, as it feels more like, you know, the Mario 64, Banjo-Kazooie, Spyro, whatever type 3D platformer, in which you have a hub world and different levels rather than having a whole sort of open world with different missions. And while there are a few gimmicky type levels, there's not a whole lot here, at least until you get to the last world. This game would possibly be my favorite in the franchise if it wasn't for one thing. This game is incredibly short. It's not too short, but I just wish there was a little bit more to this game. I'm also not a big fan of the thief sprints or whatever they're called, but honestly, that's just a me thing where I don't really like those unless they're in a racing game. But even though this isn't at the top of the list for me, it's very close, and I really love this game. So that just leaves us with number 1, which is Sly 2 Band of Thieves for PS2. There's just so much to like about this game, but let me get the negatives out of the way. One thing is that it has kind of a reverse situation of Sly 1, in which this game feels like it can go on a bit too long. It's not really that long of a game, but the story can kind of drag on a bit in certain areas. This game also has some of the, more gimmicky type missions. Not as much as Sly 3, but still. It also has a problem where the worlds feel like they're pretty much just made for Sly, which makes sense, I mean he's the title character. But you also use Bentley and Murray in this game. Navigating the open worlds with them is, it's a bit of a challenge at times. But the positives in this game definitely outweigh the negatives. It just feels so good to play as Sly in this game, and you've got this whole open world or a few different open areas to explore as Sly, and it just feels so good to play. There's a whole lot of treasures to collect to exchange for coins, which you need to buy new moves, which can be pretty fun. But there's not too many new moves like there were in Sly 3, in which it makes you want to pull your hair out because you have to grind for all these coins to get all these new moves. And, this will be controversial, I like Carmelita's voice actress in this game the best. While it would make more sense for her to have a more Latin accent, honestly, the voice acting in the other games were just not as good to me, especially in 3. 3 was probably the worst for me. But anyway, I really like the voice acting in this game, and it just happens to have my favorite voice actress for Carmelita. While this is definitely not a perfect game, it is a really great game overall. And that's it for the Sly games, at least as of June 2023. Sly Cooper may not be my favorite video game franchise, but it is up there with some of my favorites. Now as for what I would recommend, I would definitely try to recommend the original releases of these games, like, with the PS2 trilogy on PS2. The Sly collection on PS3 is pretty good, it comes with some extras that are pretty cool, and the games are mostly intact, with some minor issues here and there, but there is one major issue where they messed up my favorite boss fight in the entire franchise. They messed up the Ms. Ruby fight because the notes are out of sync with the music, and it makes me very sad. But if you can get past that, and the PS3 version is really one of your only options, then it's good enough to get. And at this point in time, I would recommend the digital copy, as the physical copy has gone up in price, so I would recommend it digitally to save money. As for the Vita version of the Sly collection, it's a bit too pricey now for me to really recommend it, but if you absolutely want to play Sly on the go and you can get past the lower frame rate, then it's good enough. They still messed up on the Ms. Ruby fight, almost got it right, but still screwed it up. It's good enough. I do like how they made the Sly collection actually feel like a Vita game on the Vita, rather than trying to emulate the PS3 controller like they did with other collections. And of course with Sly 4, I would recommend the PS3 version over the Vita, again, unless you absolutely want to take the game on the go. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, I know it's been like a year and a half since my last Mr. Rankington video, but still, I hope you enjoyed this one. Leave a comment in this video and let me know what your favorite Sly game is and how you would rank these games. And if you like this video, then go ahead and like it, and subscribe for more of these or any other types of videos that I make, and thanks for watching. Have yourself a good day.